Salutations everyone! Feeso back again to talk about One Piece chapter 901. We're finally back. I know the break was agonizing for a lot of you like it was for me. So let's get right into it with chapter 901. Even if you die, don't die. So we start off with a cover page that continues the Harajin arc. I don't have too much to say about this. We just get a design for seemingly a pirate with an axe. I'm not really up to date with this current side arc. Usually I like to wait until they are completed to read them all at once. So I think I'll analyze the Grand Fleet side arc when it's actually finished. We start off on Puff Island immediately after Big Mom has finished eating the cake. She's obviously overjoyed and speechless at how delicious the cake was. Her crew have noted that she's returned to normal and proceed to give her the usual report about what's going on. We hear that Burge is probably still in the area, but as for the Straw Hats, we transition into what happened at the end of last chapter. And as many of us thought, it's not what it seemed. It is not the Thousand Sunny that was destroyed. Just as a side note, we also get to see that Moscato from the beginning of the arc, Big Mom's 16th son, actually survived. He's seen with bandages reacting to the Straw Hats not being destroyed. This is in keeping with Oda's usual policy on killing characters. It's just not gonna happen unless it's plot necessary. So Big Mom kind of loses some of the ruthlessness she was established as having at the beginning of the arc, but at the same time, she isn't quite as self-destructive because she isn't wiping out her own children and by extension her own crew. So there are pros and cons to this. So it was actually the ship of the Sun Pirates, which is a really cool design by the way. We got to see it a lot in the Fisher Tiger flashback. And it's a shame to see it go, but at the same time my immediate reaction was called BS. Because frankly I'm tired of these sensational endings to chapters that really hook the readers despite nothing really of consequence being lost. Now everyone knew that the Thousand Sunny wasn't going to be destroyed, but at the same time this explanation which we're about to get into seems a tad far-fetched. However, with the way the chapter panned out, I found myself quickly forgetting that feeling and getting invested into the story once more. So what actually happened was that Watsume, from the Fishman Island arc, the pufferfish fishman who was working for Hody Jones and who was reformed in the Jinbe side arc, actually picked up the Thousand Sunny and switched it with the Sun Pirates flagship. You see, all of these side arcs are important, and I've got a lot to say about the Eneru side arc, but we see it time and time again. So much of this stuff comes back into play. So if you're someone who skips out on these side arcs, you really should read them once they're complete. Because pivotal stuff like Watsume forming a bond with Jinbe was established there, and it becomes a pivotal plot point at the end of this arc. So we get to see a micro flashback of Watsume hesitant about doing the switch because of the value of the Sun Pirate ship, but he does it. He quickly grabs the Thousand Sunny and shoves it in his mouth, which is the most ridiculous thing Oda could have come up with, but whatever, it works. The Fishman Pirates were around, they had to escape some way, and pretty much every feasible method of escape other than this had been written out. So it's not Deus Ex Machina, but it was highly out of left field. So realizing this, all the Big Mom ships turn around and we get to see a shot from inside Watsume's mouth, and the Straw Hats are all discombobulated, not sure quite what's going on. And Oven, of course, goes right after Watsume, sending heat currents down there and basically cooking him alive. Watsume resurfaces and ejects the Thousand Sunny, tells them to get out of here, and apologizes to Luffy for his actions in Fishman Island. So what I like here is that Oda is taking not even a second string character, but like a third or fourth string character in the Fishman Island arc and giving them a tad more depth. Watsume is basically thanking Jinbe for taking him in and sending him off by sacrificing himself here. Now, Jinbe throughout this entire sequence remains quite stoic. His mouth is open, however, he doesn't show the same outward emotion you would expect from One Piece typically. His friends are basically offering to sacrifice themselves, and what we get here is a very interesting continuation to that flashback from earlier. Basically, Big Mom's mermaid daughter tells the fishman pirates that someone's gonna die, and there'll need to be a sacrifice play. And Aladdin, being the G he is, said that anyone who wasn't willing to sacrifice their lives can leave right now, but they have to do this for Jinbe. I believe he's a former slave of the Celestial Dragons, and obviously he was saved by Fisher Tiger, and this protection continued under Jinbe. So it makes sense why so many of these fishman pirates are so loyal to their former captain. And now we get to see Jinbe's look of surprise, and we get a really neat panel of all the fishmen getting ready to make a final stand. They're all telling the Straw Hats to run away and wishing Jinbe good luck on his voyage. And then the battle begins. As the battle begins, they're obviously saying, take care to the Straw Hats, make sure you get all the water off the ship, etc, etc. Just being the most considerate former crew Jinbe could ask for. And at this point, I knew it was coming before I saw it, because if Jinbe just stood there and watched while his former crew died for him, he just wouldn't be Jinbe. He has to act, and yeah, I was dreading this, because for me, one of the major pluses of this arc was finally getting Jinbe on the ship. And yeah, it looks like that's not going to be happening, because on the next page, Jinbe says he can't leave them behind. Luffy starts to get up. Obviously, he's in no condition to act, but his first reaction is that he will help out. But Jinbe points out how pointless that would be since they are guarding the ship for it to escape. Jinbe then tells Luffy that he's going to join the rear guard, and he promises to come back alive. Now, this is gonna drive certain people I know crazy, because a lot of conspiracy theorists out there don't believe Jinbe is surviving, and for ages I stood by the position that he can't die. After what happened with Ace, it's just impossible to have another death for a character that's important to Luffy this soon after the time skip. It would render the time skip itself moot, because Luffy's training to protect his friends would be invalid if he fails to protect someone so important. There would be an emptiness there, and I don't feel like we're deep enough into the time skip to warrant something like that on Oda's part, especially considering Oda's hesitance at killing off his major characters, unlike some other authors we know. So we get a glare from Luffy to Jinbe, and Luffy says probably one of my favorite lines from this chapter, "I am your captain now." Which, for me, is just so cool, because those moments when Luffy gets serious and actually claims the position of captain and doesn't allow Nami or Zoro or anyone else to give the orders, those are some of my favorite moments in the series. Jinbe looks, of course, very serious, and we transition into another sequence seeing the Fishman pirates basically getting owned by Smoothie and the rest of the Big Mom forces. And we get the panel of the chapter, "We'll wait for you in Wano." Now, let's pause this recap and talk for a moment. Oda's decision to do this is interesting, for a couple of reasons. In my opinion, having Jinbe there at the beginning of the arc would mean that things have to start off on a relatively positive note, because whenever the crew have a new crewmate, they usually celebrate it, right? And based on one of my theories, I don't think things are going very well for Zoro and the rest of the crew. In fact, I think the decision to go and get Sanji has, in the short term, backfired on the crew. I think that perhaps Jack or some other Kaido force has basically messed up a good portion of the plan in Wano, and Luffy's late arrival will get things back on track, but I do predict that there will be some friction there with Zoro, because Zoro has told Luffy on multiple occasions not to take the New World lightly, and he told him not to concern himself with Sanji. Sanji's business is his business, and they're already on the track to face Kaido. I really think that Oda included that as a bit of foreshadowing to a big event that will come down the line. What that event is, it's hard to say, but I really don't think he would have wasted so many panels telling the story about how Zoro is slowly but surely getting concerned about the direction the crew's going in. We see him comment about Usopp leaving the crew and basically disrespecting Luffy. If we think about what Sanji has done in this arc, he actively tried to beat Luffy senseless and never truly apologized. Not to mention, Sanji's mere departure has put the Wano half of the crew in what I predict will be a sticky situation. So I'd like to see how those elements play out. Now, with all that I just outlined, I don't think it's possible to do that and celebrate Jinbe joining the crew at the same time. So we have to delay it. Now that's one theory. My other theory is Jinbe is too powerful and he needs to be saved for a pivotal moment in the Wano arc in order to save the day. However, I feel like that would be a bit of a retread of him saving Luffy and Nami from the library earlier on in this arc. So you've got the third option. Jinbe might die. I just went over why I don't think that will happen. But if it did, it would lend so much consequence to what just transpired. And honestly, the New World is lacking in consequence. I don't see how the New World is significantly more dangerous than Paradise, other than stronger opponents. So it would be nice to see something like this happen, but Jinbe is one of my favorite characters at the moment, and I really wouldn't want to lose him. That being said, I really don't think it's going that way. I think this is another tease for the audience, and as Luffy said here, even if you die, don't die. So I feel like something of consequence has to happen plot-wise for Jinbe. Either he finds something plot relevant, he does something plot relevant, or he gets scarred in a unique way that will impact his character going forward. Basically, it needs to be something important, otherwise this entire detour to Whole Cake Island was basically to fetch Sanji and come back. And it basically could be cut out from the grander One Piece narrative without too much issue. I mean, I know we'll meet Germa again and Big Mom, however, I'm not quite sure what relevance it would have, because Big Mom doesn't remember a lot of the events going off of what happened later. And she was already pretty livid at Luffy for what happened on Fishman Island. So her anger is kind of already established pre-Whole Cake Island. And with Germa 66, honestly, I don't think they'll be relevant for a while after this arc. However, I do think that if Oda wanted to, he could have established their importance in a later arc. So at the moment, I'm struggling to see how Whole Cake Island fits into the greater tapestry of One Piece, because my entire thought process was, we got a second road poneglyph, and we got another Straw Hat, and those were the two most significant events to me on the grander scale of One Piece. Yes, we had character development for Sanji and Luffy, especially during the Katakuri fight. However, I don't see any of that as essential in the grand scheme of things. So I'm very interested to see where this Jinbe stuff will go and how it will affect the story moving forward. Now, all this is not to say I think Whole Cake Island is a pointless arc and I think that it isn't any good, because I really did enjoy this arc. I'm just curious where it fits into things, because some arcs you don't really get a feel to how it impacts the larger story until a few arcs down the road, and I feel like that's what it's gonna be for Whole Cake Island. Because honestly, we were on a track to face Kaido, and it feels like Oda decided to move the Big Mom arc early. And that's really cool, because it makes the story unpredictable, and it was a really fun ride. But I do want to know what was so pressing for Oda to write it in at that particular moment, and what events he is setting up in the future. So, that detour aside, let's get back to the chapter proper. Jinbe thanks Luffy for allowing him to go, tells him that even if he dies, he can't die. So, yeah, basically roll the credits, because that's the title of the chapter, and man, I'll tell you what guys, when I read the title, I was dreading it. I was absolutely dreading it, because part of me actually thought that Oda might pull the trigger. But he did something that's even worse. He left me waiting. So, yeah, we'll see how this Jinbe stuff resolves, but for now we get to see a cutaway to Big Mom, and she's rushing back. She's hoping to get Luffy's soul to make a really powerful homie. Shades of Gecko Moria, perhaps. I do think their fruits are a bit too similar. But it is interesting to see that that's her primary objective at the moment. We then get to see Burge arriving back. We get a mention of Germa, however it's quickly halted. We know Germa are in a pretty bad situation. However, I do think that their technology has a few tricks that we haven't seen yet. So hopefully they can use that to escape. Although pretty much the only one I care about is Reiju, so maybe I don't want them to escape. I mean, if One Piece had its own Red Wedding, it would be kind of funny. But Sanji's entire goal was to save them, so we can't really have them dying here, can we? So Jinbe has told Nami to get as far away as possible because he's gonna let loose with the other fishmen. And they're basically gonna turn the sea upside down while the Straw Hats sail away. We see Aladdin being really frustrated with Jinbe, saying that he underestimated them. But Jinbe said he had to do this to make sure everyone survived. So yeah, the Straw Hats have basically all but escaped thanks to this giant tsunami the fishmen are going to create. So yeah, we get our final cutaway of the chapter and we see Bad News Morgans and Stussy basically escaping. But we see Morgans is actually rooting for Luffy to escape. And when asked about it by Stussy, Morgans just elaborates that he thinks that one of the worst generation will be the next Pirate King. And I think we know why he would be excited about that, because it's gonna be some big news. And that's the end of One Piece 901. And yeah, ultimately, it's a bittersweet ending to the arc. I did feel slightly exasperated by the fake out of the Thousand Sunny's destruction by Oda. We all knew it wouldn't happen, but the fact that he did try and fake us out with a week-long break in between does sour the taste in my mouth just a bit, because I don't like it when Oda shows something and then undoes it later. I feel like a lot of his work would be more powerful if he stuck to the original ending. But with something that big, you just know it can't stick. And the resolution he decided to pull for it was satisfying in a way because it is something you could have predicted, but at the same time, it is a little silly. The Sun Pirates making a final stand makes them really plot relevant, which was one of my big concerns about this arc. I thought that they should have been involved a tad more, and it was nice to get them so much in the latter part of the arc. Delaying Jinbei's full-time membership does hurt me a bit, because I feel that that was one of the main objectives of the arc, and honestly, we had years of waiting between Fishman Island and now, and Oda's gonna make us wait again. One thing I'd like to note is that it's nice to finally see Luffy address Jinbei as a member of his crew. I know many people will still have doubts and won't accept this until we see the recruitment party or a traditional Straw Hat cover page with him included, or heck, an anime OP or an eye catch that features him. So yeah, One Piece just can't end anytime soon, because we've got a Straw Hat who just needs to be part of the crew and be in a few arcs before the end of the series. And it seems that Oda just doesn't want him on the ship yet. That being said, his reason is completely in character. I honestly think it would have been a bit despicable if he just watched what was happening and didn't volunteer himself. And if it were me, I would never forgive myself if I didn't actually stay with my friends and help them get out of a jam. The Big Mom Pirates continue to look mega strong, and it's cool to see that Big Mom is back on the chase. Whether or not we get to see her arriving and doing anything is up for debate, but personally I think that we might be getting to the point where we cut away from the action. Because generally in Oda's style, we usually see this kind of stuff in retrospect, in flashbacks. I think that Burge's role is largely fulfilled in this arc, and I am wondering whether or not we'll get a resolution with Germa next week. But yeah, it was cool to hear Bad News Morgans, with all the influence he's been hyped up as, declaring that Luffy or one of the other Worst Generation members might become the Pirate King. I do wonder if he has other reasons for wanting that to happen. Despite it just being big news, I think that perhaps his role in the underworld could lead to higher profitability if there was a new Pirate King, or even if there was a war, because let's be honest, when there's a new Pirate King, there's gonna be a war, and it's gonna swallow the whole world. Final thing, still no Pedro, and at this point, he's got no way to save the Straw Hats, so it's looking like Oda didn't fake us out on this count, but I wouldn't add him to the list of the dead yet. He might enter the ranks of someone like Virgo and Monet, with people debating what happened to them for years and years and years, or he might fall into the ranks of Pell and get a scene as soon as the Straw Hats leave. So yeah, what I can't see after this is how the Straw Hats start partying, because after most arcs you've got a pretty triumphant finale conclusion. And here, they're basically leaving their allies to fight their battle because they're just too beaten up and have no chance against the Yonko. But the Fishman pirates can probably just swim downwards, as long as Oven doesn't completely evaporate the sea. So maybe they've just got faith in Jinbe and the rest that they can get the job done, and we'll get our traditional One Piece party in the next chapter or so. Still, it's been quite a ride. Whole Cake Island's been a lot of fun. Let me know what you thought of the chapter down in the comment section below, and I'll see you next time.